The mob boss's baby was starving inside a locked hospital wing surrounded by armed guards, private doctors, and every machine money could buy. So how does a newborn lose weight when no one can even get near him? In the cold glow of a Boston NICU, Noah Callahan stood over his son's incubator like a king who had conquered everything except death. His wife was gone. His empire was shaking. And every morning the number on his baby's scale dropped lower. Doctors called it a medical mystery. One nurse saw something darker. This is not just a story about crime, power, and betrayal. It is about the kind of love that makes dangerous men kneel and the kind of courage that speaks when everyone else stays silent. Watch closely because the truth was hiding in plain sight. Like the video and comment where you're watching from. The truth was hiding in plain sight, but 3 weeks earlier, no one at Mercy Harbor Medical Center was looking for a killer inside the walls. They were all looking at Noah Callahan. That was what people did when he entered a room. They looked at him first, then looked away quickly as if eye contact with a man like him could put their names on some invisible list. Noah had built that kind of fear, one quiet decision at a time. He did not need to shout. He did not need to threaten twice. In South Boston, his name carried through back rooms, docks, court offices, union halls, and private clubs, where men in expensive suits pretended their hands were clean. At 34, Noah Callahan had the kind of face strangers remembered. Sharp jaw, dark eyes, black hair combed back with careful precision. He dressed like a man who understood the language of power. Dark suits, white shirts, polished shoes, a watch worth more than most people made in a year. But the true danger was not in what he wore. It was in how still he could become. Men who feared him said Noah never looked angry before he destroyed someone. He looked disappointed before Mercy Harbor, before the closed hospital floor, before the tiny boy fighting for breath inside an incubator. Noah had been a king in a city that did not officially have kings. The police called him a suspected organized crime figure. The papers called him a businessman with alleged ties to illegal gambling and waterfront corruption. His enemies called him a monster when they were brave enough to whisper. Grace Callahan had called him stubborn. She was the only one who could. Grace had been born far from Noah's world in a clean white house outside Portland, Maine, with bookshelves in every room, and parents who believed evil was something people became because no one loved them properly. She met Noah at a charity gala where she was raising money for a children's shelter. Noah had come because one of his lawyers told him public generosity softened public suspicion. He planned to write a check and leave before dessert. Then Grace stepped in front of him, wearing a midnight blue dress and holding a clipboard like a weapon. "You look bored," she said. Noah glanced down at the donation sheet. "I am. At least you're honest. Usually." "Then honestly, how much can you give without needing to pretend it hurts?" That made him smile. Not much. Just enough for Grace to notice that the dangerous man in the expensive suit had a human expression buried somewhere under all that ice. He wrote a number large enough to make the event chair gasp. Grace looked at it, then looked back at him. "This is generous. It's money. Money can be generous." "No. People can be generous. Money is just paper people hide behind." She studied him for a moment. "Then stop hiding." Noah should have walked away. Instead, he stayed until midnight. For 2 years, Grace became the only soft place in Noah's life. She hated his business, hated the blood in it, hated the way men stepped aside when he passed, but she loved the boy he had once been. The hungry kid from the projects who had learned too early that asking for mercy was just another way to give someone a knife. She did not excuse him. That was why he loved her. She saw everything and still reached for him. When she became pregnant, Grace changed the house before the baby even arrived. She filled one room with pale blue paint, tiny clothes, books about rabbits and moonlight, and a wooden rocking chair Noah pretended not to notice until she caught him sitting in it one night. He had been alone in the nursery, one large hand resting on the curve of the chair arm. Grace leaned against the door frame. "You know babies don't come with instructions." Noah looked at the crib. "I can learn. You can learn a lot of things." He heard what she did not say. "You can learn to leave this life." He looked at her then. She was barefoot, hair loose over one shoulder, one hand resting on her stomach. There were moments when Grace looked at him as if she could already see the man he might become if he ever stopped mistaking control for safety. "I'm trying," he said. "I know. I don't know if trying is enough." Grace crossed the room, took his hand, and placed it against her belly. The baby kicked. Noah froze. Grace smiled. "He heard you." Noah swallowed hard. I have a feeling." The second kick came stronger. For a man who had watched men bleed without blinking, Noah Callahan nearly lost his breath because of a movement smaller than a heartbeat beneath his palm. Grace laughed softly. "There he is." Noah lowered his head until his forehead touched her stomach. "Eli," he whispered. Grace's fingers moved through his hair. "Yes," she said. "Eli." 3 weeks later, the city took her from him. It happened on Seaport Boulevard after a charity dinner Grace had refused to miss. Noah had wanted her home. She was tired, 8 months pregnant, and there had been too much movement around his family in recent days. A Russian crew had tested one of his gambling rooms. A federal audit had touched 2 shell companies tied to his docks. A man who owed him money vanished before paying. Those things were noise, but Noah had lived long enough to know noise often came before gunfire. Grace kissed him in the foyer before leaving. "Noah, I'm going to a children's hospital dinner, not a battlefield. Same thing if I'm not there." She smiled and fixed his tie even though he was not wearing one. "You can't stand in front of every bad thing." "I can try." "No," she said gently. "You can change what brings bad things to our door." He said nothing. Grace softened. "I'll be back in 2 hours." Noah touched her stomach. "Both of you. Both of us." The explosion shook glass 3 blocks away. By the time Noah reached the street, smoke was rolling over the pavement and alarms were screaming through the harbor air. The SUV was a twisted black skeleton under flashing lights. Firefighters shouted. Paramedics moved fast. Police tried to push Noah back until one look at his face made them step aside. He saw Grace's hand first. The wedding ring was still on her finger. After that, the world came in pieces. Blood on the asphalt. A medic shouting that they had a fetal heartbeat. Someone cutting metal. Noah climbing into the wreckage with his bare hands until 3 men pulled him away. Grace's face pale beneath soot and blood. Her lips moving once. He never knew if she said his name or the baby's. At Mercy Harbor, they took Grace through one set of doors and Noah through another. He left bloody prints on the walls. A priest arrived. A surgeon came out with his mask hanging loose. Someone said they were sorry. Then another doctor appeared. "The baby is alive." Noah stared at him. "What?" "We have to move now. Emergency delivery. He's premature, but he has a heartbeat." Noah gripped the edge of the counter so hard the wood cracked beneath his hand. "Save him. We're doing everything we can." Noah stepped close enough for the doctor to smell smoke on his coat. "No," he said. "You're doing everything that exists. The baby was born at 2:12 in the morning. 4 pounds 12 ounces. Too small, too early, too quiet." When Noah first saw him, Eli was inside a plastic box under blue-white light chest, fluttering like a trapped bird. Tubes ran from his tiny body into machines. His skin was red and thin. His eyes stayed closed. One hand rested near his face, fingers curled as if he were holding on to something only he could feel. Noah stood outside the glass and did not move. A nurse asked if he wanted to sit. He did not answer. A doctor explained oxygen support, feeding lines, prematurity risk of infection, temperature regulation, respiratory distress. The words floated past Noah without shape. He understood only one thing. Grace was gone. Eli was still here. That made the child not just his son. It made him the last living piece of the woman Noah had failed to protect. By sunrise, the 8th floor of Mercy Harbor Medical Center was no longer just a hospital wing. It became Callahan territory. Noah's men arrived in dark sedans before the news crews could gather outside. They moved with quiet discipline, posting themselves at elevators, stairwells, supply corridors, and waiting room doors. They did not flash guns, but they did not need to. Their jackets hung in a way that told everyone enough. Hospital administration objected for exactly 7 minutes. Then Noah's lawyer arrived with a private security contract, a donation agreement, a liability waiver, and a look that suggested arguing would become expensive. Mercy Harbor accepted the arrangement. Officially, the Callahan family had hired enhanced protective services after a violent attack. Unofficially, every staff member knew the 8th floor now belonged to a grieving mob boss who had not slept since his wife died. The nurses whispered in break rooms. Doctors avoided unnecessary rounds. Security guards from the hospital stayed far from Noah's men. Parents of other NICU babies were quietly moved to a different section with apologies and gift baskets. The administration called it a privacy protocol. Everyone else called it survival. Noah did not leave. He slept in a leather chair in the private waiting room, if closing his eyes for 20 minutes at a time could be called sleep. He drank black coffee until his hands shook. He took phone calls in a low voice near the window, speaking to men who reported movements, names, rumors, possible suspects. Sometimes his voice stayed calm. Sometimes his hand tightened around the phone until Maggie wondered how the glass did not crack. Maggie Reed noticed everything. That was how she had survived both war and nursing. She noticed when a mother's smile became too fixed. She noticed when a premature baby's breathing changed before the monitor caught it. She noticed when a doctor pretended confidence while rereading the same lab number twice. She noticed the difference between a man who was angry and a man trying not to fall apart. Noah Callahan was both. The first day Maggie cared for Eli, Noah stood close enough to watch every movement of her hands. She washed gloved, checked lines, adjusted the blanket, and inspected the feeding tube. His shadow covered half the incubator. "Are you going to breathe down my neck the whole time?" she asked. The room went silent. One of Noah's men shifted near the door. Noah looked at her. Maggie did not look away. "My son is in that box," he said. "I know. I watch everyone who touches him. You can watch from 2 feet back." His eyes narrowed. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes. And your son needs steady hands around him, not terrified ones." The guard near the door looked at the floor as if he had suddenly found it fascinating. Noah stepped back 1 slow inch. Maggie continued working. Eli made a small sound, not quite a cry. Maggie lowered her voice. "I know, sweetheart. That tape pulls. I'd complain too." Noah's expression changed at the word sweetheart. It was brief, gone almost before it arrived, but Maggie saw it. Pain moved through him like a shadow crossing water. "You talk to him," he said. "I talk to all of them. He can hear you." "Yes. How do you know?" Maggie glanced up. "Because babies know more than grown men think they do." For the first time since Grace died, one corner of Noah's mouth moved. Not a smile, the memory of one. After that, he asked for Maggie by name, not because she was soft with him. She was not. Not because she flattered him. She never did. Noah asked for Maggie because she treated Eli like a child instead of a case and treated Noah like a father instead of a monster. That did not mean she trusted him. Maggie knew the Callahan name. Everyone in Boston did. She had grown up hearing stories about men who borrowed money from the wrong people, businesses that burned after owners refused protection, witnesses who forgot entire nights after private conversations. She was not naive enough to confuse grief with goodness. But she had also seen men in uniform do terrible things, and men with criminal records give their last dollar to hungry kids. The world had taught Maggie that people were rarely one thing. Noah Callahan was dangerous. He was also the man who sat beside his son's incubator at 4 a.m, reading Goodnight Moon in a voice so rough and quiet that Maggie had to turn away. He did not know where to place his hands when he stood near Eli. He had ordered men shot, negotiated with politicians, threatened judges, and moved millions through fake companies, but a diaper the size of his palm made him helpless. The first time Maggie let him touch Eli through the incubator glove, Noah hesitated. Like this, he asked, slowly. Let him find you. Noah slid one finger inside. Eli's tiny hand opened, then closed around him. Noah stopped breathing. Maggie watched his face. There it was again, the crack in the armor. No performance, no power, just a father staring at a hand smaller than his thumb. He's strong, Maggie said. Noah's voice was barely there. He has to be. For the first week, Eli seemed to hold his ground. His oxygen needs stayed manageable. His color improved. The doctors discussed careful weight gain, slow progress, guarded optimism. Noah clung to every good word like a drowning man gripping wood. Then the numbers changed. At first it was small, an ounce, then 3, then more. Dr. Warren Pike explained it during morning rounds with the confidence of a man used to being believed. Premature infants can be unpredictable, he said, standing at the foot of Eli's incubator with a tablet in one hand. His metabolic demand is high. We're adjusting nutrition. Noah stared at the chart. You said he was improving. He was. These things fluctuate. Maggie stood beside the medication cart listening. Pike did not look at her. He rarely did unless he needed something. Dr. Pike was the kind of physician hospitals loved to put on brochures. Silver hair, clean smile, calm voice in office lined with awards. He knew donors by name. He knew which families required warmth and which required authority. With Noah, he used both and failed at both. Noah did not trust Polish. He lost weight, Noah said. A small amount. He has no weight to lose. Pike adjusted his glasses. That is why we're increasing his TPN concentration. Then do it. We already have. Noah stepped closer. Then do more. Pike's face tightened, but only Maggie saw it. We cannot simply flood his body with nutrients. He is fragile. Noah leaned in. My wife is in the ground, doctor. My son is in that glass box. Do not explain fragile to me like it's a word you own. Pike went pale. Maggie moved before the air could turn violent. Mr. Callahan, she said. Noah did not look at her. Not now. Now. His eyes cut to hers. Maggie nodded toward the monitor. Eli's heart rate had climbed. Noah saw it. The rage drained from his face in an instant, replaced by fear so naked it made the room feel private. He stepped back. Pike cleared his throat. I'll review the labs again. He left quickly. Noah stayed where he was, staring at the monitor. Maggie adjusted the noise level on one machine and dimmed the overhead light. He reacts to tension, she said. Noah gave a humorless breath. Then he picked the wrong father. Maggie did not answer right away. Outside the window, morning light touched the Boston skyline, turning the harbor silver. No, she said quietly. He picked a father who stayed. Noah looked at her then. The silence between them was different from before, less like suspicion, more like the beginning of a wound being seen. He looked exhausted, not tired. Exhausted was deeper. It lived under the skin, pulled at the mouth, hollowed the eyes. Maggie had seen it in soldiers after firefights, in mothers after emergency surgeries, in children who had learned too early that adults could not always save them. Grace wanted him away from all this, Noah said. It was the first time he had spoken his wife's name to Maggie. Maggie folded a clean blanket and placed it near the incubator. What did she want for him? Noah looked down at Eli. A yard, a dog, pancakes on Sundays, Little League if he liked baseball, piano if he liked music, anything normal. His mouth tightened. She wanted me to sell what I could burn what I couldn't and walk away. Why didn't you? The question came softly, but it landed hard. One of Noah's guards glanced over. Noah did not, because men like me don't walk away. We get pulled apart the second we show our backs. Maybe Grace knew that. She knew everything. Then maybe she was asking you to become the kind of man who could survive it. Noah studied her. Most people measured words around him. Maggie did not throw them carelessly, but she did not file down their edges either. He found himself wanting to hear more from her, which annoyed him because wanting anything had become dangerous. "Do you always talk to grieving criminals this way?" he asked. "Only the ones blocking my light." This time he did smile. Small, brief, real enough to hurt him. Then Eli stirred and both of them looked down. The moment passed, but it did not disappear. Over the next several days, the hospital settled into a rhythm that was not peace, but something close to routine. Maggie came on shift, checked Eli, endured Noah's silent watchfulness, challenged Pike's vague explanations, and pretended not to notice when Noah had fresh coffee waiting at the nurse's station by midnight. The cup was always black. The first time she ignored it. The second time she moved it aside. The third time, after a 12-hour shift and a code in another room, she picked it up and took one sip. Noah was standing near the window. "Don't look pleased," she said. "I wouldn't dare." "You look pleased." "I'm grieving." "You're mistaken." She shook her head, but she drank the coffee. Noah watched her over the rim of his own cup. "What made you choose this?" he asked. "Nursing babies, this small." Maggie leaned against the counter, eyes on Eli's monitor. "They fight honestly." Noah looked at her. "How so?" "They don't lie. They don't posture. They don't pretend to be stronger than they are. If they're hurting their bodies, say so. If they're improving, they show you. You just have to pay attention." Something in that answer stayed with him. You just have to pay attention. Noah had paid attention his whole life, to enemies, to money, to weakness, to betrayal. But in the hospital the rules were different. A threat did not always come with a gun. A lie did not always sound like a lie. A man could be surrounded by loyal soldiers and still miss the danger reaching through a feeding tube. By the end of the second week, Eli had lost more weight. The official explanation became more complicated. Possible malabsorption, possible metabolic stress, possible intolerance to lipid concentration, possible prematurity-related failure to thrive. Pike said each phrase like a locked door. Noah heard only one thing. They did not know. He began calling specialists, pediatric nutritionists, neonatologists from New York, a metabolic expert from Philadelphia, a retired physician in Chicago who owed someone a favor. They reviewed the file, offered theories, recommended adjustments, and asked for more tests. Nothing changed. Eli kept shrinking. Maggie began coming in early and leaving late. She told herself it was because the case bothered her. That was true. She told herself it was because Eli needed consistency. Also true. She told herself Noah Callahan had nothing to do with it. That was less true. There was something unsettling about the way grief had stripped him down. In another life, Maggie would have avoided a man like him at all costs. In this one, she found him at 3 in the morning, standing barefoot in the waiting room, holding a tiny hospital blanket to his chest, because it had Grace's perfume on it from the night she packed the baby bag. He looked up when Maggie passed. For once, he seemed ashamed. Maggie stopped. Neither of them spoke. Then she walked to the staff kitchen, warmed a cup of milk, came back, and placed it on the table beside him. "I don't drink milk," he said. "I know." "Then why bring it? Because you've had 6 coffees and no food." He looked at the cup as if it had insulted him. Maggie turned to leave. "Grace used to do that," he said. She paused. "Do what?" "Put things in front of me and act like I was smart enough to know what they meant." Maggie looked back. "Were you?" "No." She almost smiled. "At least you're consistent." Noah picked up the cup. His hand was steady, but his eyes were not. "I was supposed to be in the car." Maggie said nothing. "I changed plans at the last minute. A meeting ran over. Grace told me not to rush, said she'd meet me at home. If I had been there, maybe I would have seen something. Maybe my men would have checked under the vehicle. Maybe she would still be alive." Maggie stepped into the room. "Maybe you both would be dead." His jaw tightened. "That's supposed to help, no. It's supposed to be true." He looked away. "I built the life that killed her." Maggie did not soften the silence. Some truths needed room. Finally, she said, "Then don't let it kill him too." Noah looked toward the NICU doors. Through the glass, Eli's incubator glowed under gentle light. "I don't know how to save him," he said. Maggie followed his gaze. "I don't either. Not yet." That final word mattered. Noah heard it. Not yet. The next morning, Pike presented a new adjustment to Eli's nutrition plan: higher caloric density, altered lipid balance, more frequent monitoring. He spoke with calm authority while Noah stood beside him like a storm waiting for permission. Maggie listened from the foot of the bed. Something about the explanation rubbed against her instincts. Premature babies were fragile, yes. Weight shifts happened, yes. But Eli's decline felt too clean in its timing, too stubborn in its pattern. He was not crashing in the chaotic way very sick babies often crashed. He was being pulled downward by something steady, something repeated. When Pike finished, he looked at Maggie. "Nurse Reed, make sure the updated TPN orders are followed exactly." "Of course," she said. His eyes held hers a second too long. Not fear, not guilt. Warning. Maggie lowered her gaze to the tablet in his hand and saw one detail before he turned away. The order had already been entered before rounds, before he discussed it, before anyone questioned the previous plan. Her fingers tightened around the blanket she was folding. Across the room, Cal Brennan arrived carrying a paper bag from a bakery Noah liked. Cal was everything Noah was not on the surface. Open smile, easy voice, warm hands that clapped shoulders and squeezed arms. He called nurses sweetheart and doctors genius. He remembered names. He brought food. He made the guards laugh. People liked Cal because he made danger feel friendly. "Noah," Cal said, crossing the room. "You need to eat." Noah did not move from Eli's side. Cal looked at Maggie. "You tell him. He listens to you." Maggie met his smile. "He barely listens to gravity." Cal laughed. Noah did not. Cal stepped beside the incubator, his face softening as he looked at Eli. "How's our little fighter today?" "Our." Maggie noticed the word. Noah did not seem to. "He lost again," Noah said. Cal placed a hand on Noah's shoulder. "I'm sorry." Noah stared at his son. Cal's thumb pressed once into Noah's jacket, a gesture that looked like comfort. "Maybe you should rest. Just an hour. I'll stay with him." Noah shook his head. I'm not leaving. No one thinks you're weak for breathing, cousin. Noah's eyes hardened. I said I'm not leaving. Cal lifted both hands in surrender. All right, I'm here. Whatever you need. He set the bakery bag on the counter and turned to Maggie. And you, Nurse Reed. Anything you need. There was nothing wrong with his tone. That was what made Maggie look closer. No, she said. I have what I need. Cal smiled. Good. As he walked away, his eyes passed over Eli's feeding line. Only for a second. Only once. But Maggie saw it. That night, after Eli's weight dropped again, Maggie stood alone at the nurse's station and opened the chart from the beginning. Not the summary, not the diagnosis. The numbers, the times, the bags, the hands that touched them. Outside the windows, Boston slept under a cold rain, and inside the locked wing of Mercy Harbor, Maggie Reed pulled the first page closer and began to read. Maggie Reed pulled the first page closer and began to read, not like a nurse checking a chart, but like someone listening to a confession that had been whispered too softly the first time. The locked wing of Mercy Harbor had gone quiet around her. At night, hospitals never truly slept. They breathed through vents, hummed through machines, clicked through monitors, and whispered through rubber soles moving across polished floors. But the 8th floor felt different. It carried a pressure in its walls. Armed men stood outside elevators. Curtains stayed half-drawn. Nurses spoke in lowered voices. Even the fluorescent lights seemed afraid to flicker. Maggie sat beneath one of those lights with Eli Callahan's records spread across the desk. Weight logs, feeding schedules, pharmacy records, temperature readings, heart rate trends, lab panels, nursing notes, physician updates. Every number had been entered by someone who believed the chart was telling a medical story. Maggie was starting to believe it was telling a crime story. She began with the weights. Eli had not been thriving after birth, but that was expected. Premature babies fought for every ounce. Some days they gained. Some days they lost. Progress could look like a staircase built by a drunk man, crooked, uneven, frustrating. But Eli's numbers were not crooked. They were timed. Maggie ran her finger down the page. 4 pounds, 12 ounces at birth. 4 pounds, 10 ounces after stabilization. 4 pounds, 11 ounces after increased nutrition. Then 4 pounds, 8 ounces the next morning. She turned the page. Another small recovery during the day. Another drop after the night feeding. Again and again. Her coffee had gone cold beside her. She reached for it anyway, took one bitter sip, and kept reading. Across the hall, Eli slept inside his incubator beneath a soft pool of light. His tiny chest rose and fell in quick, shallow movements. A blue cap covered his head. One hand rested near his cheek, fingers curled as if he were holding onto a dream. Noah sat in the chair beside him. He had finally fallen asleep, if that rigid, painful stillness counted. His head leaned back against the wall. His shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows. There was a dark shadow along his jaw, and one hand remained near the incubator as though even in sleep he was guarding the child. Maggie looked at him for a moment longer than she meant to. Then she looked back at the chart. The numbers had to matter more than the man. She opened the TPN administration record. Total parenteral nutrition was supposed to be Eli's lifeline. A carefully balanced mixture of calories, protein, fats, sugars, vitamins, and minerals. It bypassed the gut and entered directly through the line, giving fragile babies time to grow when their bodies were not ready for normal feeding. If Eli could not gain weight on TPN, something was terribly wrong. Dr. Pike had said malabsorption, but that word had bothered Maggie from the start. It sounded scientific enough to quiet a frightened parent, but it did not fit the full picture. Eli was not showing the signs Maggie expected. His abdomen was not dangerously swollen. His labs were strained, but not in the pattern Pike kept implying. His decline was too specific. Maggie clicked open the pharmacy access log. The The screen asked for her password. She entered it. A list of timestamps appeared. The TPN bags were prepared in the hospital pharmacy twice a day. Each bag was labeled sealed, scanned, and placed in the restricted medical refrigerator outside the NICU. Nurses retrieved them before administration. Doctors could access the storage room when needed. Pharmacy staff could enter for delivery and verification. Maggie sorted the access by time. Her eyes narrowed. The night bags were always delivered correctly. The seals were always recorded as intact. The barcode scans always matched. And still the worst drops came after the midnight bag. She wrote the times on the back of a blank medication sheet. Midnight infusion, temperature rise between 2 and 4, heart rate increase near 430, weight drop by 6. She stared at the pattern until the numbers seemed to lift off the page. Eli was not simply failing. Something was happening to him after the night nutrition reached his body. A soft voice came from behind her. "You look like you found the devil in there." Maggie turned. One of Noah's men stood near the nurse's station. His name was Tommy Vale. He was broad-shouldered, quiet, and younger than the others, with nervous eyes that did not match the gun under his jacket. "Not yet," Maggie said. Tommy glanced toward Noah, then back at her. "Boss hasn't slept more than an hour. I know. He listens to you. That's generous. He stops when you speak." Maggie closed the chart halfway. Most people stop when a nurse tells them their baby's monitor is climbing. Tommy looked down the hall. "Most people ain't him." "No," Maggie said. "They're not." Tommy shifted his weight. "My sister had a baby early. Not this early, but early. Kid's 7 now. Won't stop talking. Drives everybody crazy." A small smile touched Maggie's mouth. "That's the best outcome?" "Yeah." Tommy swallowed. "This little guy, he gonna get there?" Maggie looked through the glass at Eli. "I'm trying to make sure he does." Tommy nodded once and stepped away. Maggie waited until his footsteps faded before she returned to the computer. The access log had one oddity: a staff override at 2:13 a.m., 2 nights earlier. The name attached to it was Dr. Warren Pike. The reason entered was nutritional order verification. Maggie leaned back slowly. Doctors had reasons to check bags. That alone meant nothing. But Pike had told Noah that same morning there had been no irregularity, no change, no concern with the nutrition supply. If he had accessed the refrigerator in the middle of the night, he had not mentioned it. She searched the previous week. 2 more staff overrides, both Pike, both between 2 and 3 in the morning, both before Eli's sharpest weight drops. Maggie's skin prickled. A door opened down the hall. She closed the log and turned her chair slightly. Dr. Pike stepped out of the physician consultation room with his white coat over one arm and his phone in his hand. He looked freshly washed hair, neat glasses, clean face, composed in the way that made patients' families trust him. He paused when he saw Maggie awake at the station. "Nurse Reed," he said. "Long night. They all are lately." His eyes flicked to the papers in front of her, reviewing charts, trying to understand Eli's pattern. "There is no pattern. There is a complex neonatal metabolic problem." Maggie kept her voice even. "Those 2 things are not mutually exclusive." Pike gave her a thin smile. "You've become very invested in this case. He's my patient. He is also the son of a dangerous man. Be careful you do not confuse proximity to power with responsibility." Maggie stood. The chair wheels whispered against the floor. "With respect, Dr. Responsibility is exactly what proximity gives us." His smile faded. For a second, the hallway stripped him of his polish. Maggie saw irritation underneath. Not fear, not panic. Something colder, something insulted. "You are tired," he said. "I am. Go take 10 minutes. I'm fine." That was not a suggestion. Maggie looked at him. Then she looked through the glass toward Noah. Pike followed her gaze. His mouth tightened. Before he could speak again, Noah stirred in the chair. His eyes opened instantly alert, as if some part of him had heard tension before sound reached him. Pike straightened. "Noah," he said, "I was just telling Nurse Reed to rest. We need our staff sharp." Noah rose from the chair. "She's sharp enough to tell me things you don't." Pike's expression went carefully blank. Maggie stepped in before the room could ignite. "Eli's stable right now," she said. "I'm going to check the supply room, then I'll recheck his line." Noah's eyes moved to hers. He saw something there. Maggie gave the smallest shake of her head. Not now. Noah understood enough to stay silent. Pike did not miss the exchange. His gaze sharpened, but Maggie was already walking away. The medical refrigerator room sat around the corner from the NICU entrance. It was small, cold, and too bright, with stainless steel shelving and a locked storage unit for specialized nutrition. Maggie swiped her badge. The door clicked. Inside, the air bit through her scrubs. She pulled on gloves and found Eli's bin. 2 bags hung inside, both labeled with his name, medical record number, formula concentration, pharmacy verification, and administration times. Both looked perfect. That was what frightened her. Mistakes usually left messes. A wrong label, a broken seal, a missing scan, an entry that did not match. Intentional harm looked clean. Maggie lifted the first bag and held it under the light. The milky fluid shifted inside the plastic. She turned it slowly, checking the seam, the port, the label edges. Nothing. She checked the second bag. At first, it also looked untouched. Then she saw a slight change in the reflection near the lower edge of the label. Not a hole exactly, more like the memory of one. A tiny raised spot beneath a thin smear of clear adhesive. Maggie's breath left her silently. She pressed one finger beside it. The plastic gave the faintest uneven resistance. Someone had pierced the bag and sealed it after. The room seemed colder. Maggie looked toward the small camera in the upper corner. Its red light was on. That should have comforted her. It did not. She pulled a sterile syringe from the emergency drawer and drew a small sample through the administration port, careful not to disturb the suspicious mark. She capped the vial, labeled it only with the time, and placed it in her scrub pocket. Then she took out her phone and photographed the bag from 3 angles. No flash. No sound. She returned it exactly as she had found it. When she stepped back into the hall, Noah was waiting in the shadow near the vending machines. He had moved silently for a man his size. Maggie nearly cursed under her breath. "You are terrible at staying put," she said. "You are terrible at pretending nothing is wrong." His voice was low enough not to carry. Maggie glanced toward the NICU doors. "You need to go back to Eli. Tell me what you found." "I found a reason to test something. That is not an answer. It is the only one you're getting in a hallway." His eyes dropped to her pocket. "What's in there?" Maggie said nothing. Noah stepped closer, not threatening her, but bringing the full force of himself into the narrow space between them. "Maggie." She hated the way he said her name, not because it frightened her, because it made her want to trust him faster than wisdom allowed. "If I am right," she said, "then someone with access is hurting your son." Noah went still. The kind of stillness men warned each other about. Maggie raised a hand before he could move. "No." His eyes darkened. "You do not tell me no after saying that." "I do, if no is the thing keeping Eli alive." "Who, I don't know. A lie, but not a complete one. She did not know enough. Pike was suspicious. The bag was tampered with. The logs pointed in his direction. But Maggie had seen too many ruined lives built on almost sure, almost proven, almost enough. Noah's jaw worked once. "I can make people talk, and whoever is doing this can make evidence disappear." He stared at her. "You think like a soldier." Maggie did not answer. His gaze moved over her face, catching something he had only sensed before. You were one. Another life. Combat medic. His expression shifted just slightly. That why you don't scare easy, I scare fine. I just keep working. For a moment, the hard edge in his face softened. Then Eli's monitor beeped through the glass and both of them turned. The baby stirred inside the incubator. Maggie moved first. Noah followed but stayed back when she raised 2 fingers without looking at him. She checked the line, adjusted the blanket, and watched Eli settle. His pulse eased. His tiny mouth opened once, then closed. Noah stood behind her, close enough that Maggie felt the heat of him at her shoulder. Please, he said. Just one word. No command, no threat, no money, no power. Only a father stripped to the bone. Maggie looked down at Eli. I'm going to the lab. Noah exhaled. I'm coming. No. Maggie, if you come, people notice. If people notice whoever did this gets nervous. Stay here. Look angry. Look exhausted. Look like you still believe Pike is the only man with answers. I do not believe that. Then act. His eyes held hers. Grace used to say I was a terrible actor. She was probably right. That almost broke something in him. Not a smile, not grief, something between the two. Come back, he said. Maggie nodded. Then she left before either of them could say more. The basement lab smelled like antiseptic old coffee and warm machinery. It was quieter than the upper floors, with fewer windows and fewer people who wanted to be there after midnight. Maggie found Aaron, the night technician, eating crackers from a vending machine while watching a game show with the volume low. He looked up when she entered. No, he said immediately. I haven't asked anything. You have that face. What face? The face that got me yelled at by infectious disease last winter. You helped save a kid last winter. I helped you break protocol. You helped me confirm sepsis before a baby crashed. Aaron sighed and pushed away from the counter. What do you need? Maggie placed the capped vial on the table. Run a broad toxicology screen, quietly. His expression changed. On what nutrition sample? From where a patient? Maggie? Aaron? He rubbed a hand over his face. You know what happens if this is nothing, then I apologize with baked goods. And if it is something, Maggie looked toward the elevator. Then we save a baby. Aaron stared at her for 3 seconds, then grabbed the vial. I hate your face. No. You don't. I really do. But he was already moving. The machine took 20 minutes. Maggie spent every one of them standing still. Aaron tried to make conversation once, then thought better of it. The analyzer hummed and clicked light moving across the panel. Maggie watched the progress bar inch forward. She thought about Eli's tiny hand closing around Noah's finger. She thought about Grace dying on a street bright with fire. She thought about Pike's eyes when he told her to rest. The printer came alive. Aaron pulled the report, scanned it, and stopped. His face lost color. Maggie took the paper from him. The compound name meant something to her from training from emergency medicine lectures from the dark corners of toxicology no one expected to see in a neonatal ward. A metabolic poison. Rare. Deliberate. Cruel. Not the kind of contamination that happened by accident. Not the kind of thing a nurse mixed up during a tired shift. Someone had added it to Eli's nutrition to make his body consume itself from the inside. Maggie's hand tightened around the report. Aaron whispered, Tell me that isn't from a baby. She did not answer. He stepped back. Maggie, you need to call hospital security. No, the police. No. You can't handle this alone. I'm not. But even as she said it, Maggie understood the shape of the danger. Hospital security would panic. The administration would protect itself. The police would move slowly, officially, visibly. Noah would explode the second he heard confirmation. Pike, if warned, would erase everything he could. And if someone beyond Pike was involved, that person would already be planning for loose ends. She folded the report and slipped it inside her scrub top. "Print me a second copy." Aaron did. "Delete the run from the visible queue." His eyes widened. "Maggie, do it or a premature baby goes back on poison nutrition." Aaron swallowed. Then he did it. Maggie left the lab with the report pressed against her skin and her heart beating hard but steady. She did not take the elevator. Too visible. She took the stairs. At the 5th-floor landing, she stopped. Voices echoed from above. One was Pike's. The other was familiar in a way that made her stomach turn before her mind caught up. "Cal Brennan." "You said he wouldn't last this long," Cal said. Pike's reply came sharp and low. "I said premature infants are unpredictable. Do not dress this up for me, doctor." Noah is starting to look around. The nurse is looking too. Maggie pressed herself against the wall. Pike cursed softly. "She's suspicious, not informed. She's dangerous. She's a nurse. She's the only person Noah listens to." There was a pause. Maggie could hear her own breathing. Cal spoke again, colder now. "Grace was supposed to die with the baby inside her. That was clean. Tragic. Understandable. But the kid lived, and now Noah sits upstairs like a ghost while the captains start asking whether he can still lead." Pike's voice trembled beneath his irritation. "You told me this was about stabilizing the family. It is. You planted a bomb. I gave an order. You involved a child." Cal laughed once without humor. "That child is the last chain around Noah's throat. When it breaks, he breaks. Then the men come to me because men always walk toward whoever is still standing." Maggie closed her eyes. Only for a heartbeat. When she opened them, the world was clear again. Pike said, "The dose is working. His organs are under stress. Another night, maybe 2. No more, maybe. If I increase it too fast, it raises questions. Questions are already here." A step sounded above her. Maggie held still. Cal's voice dropped. "Handle the nurse." Pike said nothing. "I mean it," Cal continued. "If she finds something, Noah burns down the city and I lose control of the fire. She has no proof. She has instincts. I've watched her. People like that don't need much." Maggie's fingers curled around the railing. Pike exhaled. "I'll deal with it. Tonight." Silence followed. Then the door above opened. Maggie moved down one step, hidden by the angle of the landing. Cal's footsteps descended from the floor above, slow and confident. Maggie stayed in the shadow, one hand over the report, the other near the small trauma shears clipped to her pocket. Cal passed the landing without seeing her. His cologne lingered after him, expensive and clean. A moment later, Pike's footsteps moved upward, toward the 8th floor, toward Eli. Maggie waited 3 seconds. Then she ran. By the time she reached the 8th floor, her lungs burned and the report felt hot against her skin. She pushed through the staff corridor and entered near the supply rooms, keeping her pace controlled as she passed one of Noah's guards. "You good, Nurse Reed?" Tommy asked. "Fine." The lie tasted like metal. Through the glass, she saw Noah standing beside Eli's incubator. Pike was not in the room yet. Maggie headed straight for the medical refrigerator. She needed the poisoned bag secured. She needed clean nutrition hung. She needed proof in a lockbox before Pike realized the lab had confirmed what he had done. She swiped her badge. The light flashed red. Access denied. Maggie stared at it. She swiped again. Red. A cold understanding moved through her. Someone had changed her access. Behind her, the hallway seemed to stretch. She heard a door open. Slowly, Maggie turned. Dr. Warren Pike stood 20 feet away in the white glare of the corridor. His coat was buttoned now. His hair was perfect. His face was calm. Too calm. "Nurse Reed," he said. Maggie kept her hand near her pocket. "Dr. Pike." His eyes dropped to the locked refrigerator door, then returned to her face. "You look like you need help getting into a room you no longer have permission to enter." Maggie smiled, small and humorless. "You work fast. So do you." For a second, neither moved. Then Eli's monitor beeped behind the glass. Maggie's eyes flicked toward the sound. Pike noticed. His voice softened into something almost kind. "You should have let the doctors handle this." Maggie looked back at him. "I was trying to find one." The words landed between Maggie and Dr. Warren Pike like a match dropped in gasoline. For 1 second, Pike did not move. The corridor lights shone down on his silver hair, his clean white coat, the gold-framed glasses that made him look more like a trusted specialist than a man who could stand outside a nursery and watch a baby waste away. Then his mouth curved. Not into a smile, into permission. "You have no idea how many careers I have ended for less than that," he said. Maggie kept her shoulders loose. Her pulse had settled into the old rhythm, the one she knew from dusty roads overseas, from nights when the radio cracked with panic and headlights swept over blood. Fear was there, but it knew its place. It stayed behind the work. "You can start with mine after I check Eli's nutrition. That child is not your concern anymore. He became my concern the moment you poisoned him." Pike's eyes sharpened. There it was, the smallest fracture in his mask. Maggie saw it and knew he understood. She had not guessed. She had proof. His gaze dropped to her scrub top. "The lab report," he said softly. Maggie did not answer. Behind the glass wall of the NICU, Eli's monitor kept a steady rhythm. Noah stood near the incubator, facing away from them, one hand braced against the clear wall, as he watched his son breathe. He did not yet know what was happening 10 yards behind him. Pike took a step closer. "You think giving that paper to Noah Callahan will save you? I think it will save Eli." "No." Pike's voice lowered. "It will start a massacre in a hospital full of premature infants, nurses, janitors, and sick people who did nothing to you. Noah will kill first and understand later. Men like him always do." Maggie's jaw tightened. "Men like you count on that." Pike laughed under his breath. "You are very dramatic for someone who changes diapers for a living." The insult was meant to make her smaller. It did not. Maggie looked at him with the cold patience of a woman who had seen bullets tear through men who thought titles could protect them. "I have held a baby's heart rate steady with 2 fingers while a surgeon ran down a hall," she said. "I have kept children breathing with equipment older than your ego. I have watched mothers pray over incubators at 3 in the morning because people like you were too proud to say you missed something. Do not stand in my hospital and pretend I am the one who does not understand life and death." Pike's nostrils flared. A door opened near the elevator. Tommy, one of Noah's guards, looked down the hall. Maggie shifted her body just enough to block his view of Pike's face. "Everything okay?" Nurse Reed Tommy called. Pike's expression changed instantly. Warm, concerned, professional. "Just a staffing issue," he said before Maggie could answer. "Nurse Reed is overtired." Tommy looked at Maggie. She had one chance to pull Noah's men into this. One shout would bring guns, chaos, blood. Pike would die. Maybe Cal would run. Maybe the hospital would bury evidence before anyone knew where to look. Maggie forced herself to breathe. "I'm fine," she said. Tommy hesitated. Noah looked up from inside the NICU. Maggie met his eyes through the glass. There was no time to explain, so she gave him nothing but stillness. Noah studied her face. Then Pike moved. He took her by the elbow with a grip hard enough to bruise and guided her toward the supply room door. "Let's discuss this privately," he said. Maggie allowed 2 steps. Only 2. The moment they crossed the threshold, Pike shoved her inside and locked the door behind them. The supply room was narrow and bright, packed with sterile gauze tubing suction canisters, linen bags, formula syringes, and metal shelves that reached nearly to the ceiling. Maggie's shoulder struck a rack of sealed gloves. Boxes shifted above her. Pike stood between her and the door. His breathing had changed. He no longer sounded like a doctor. He sounded like a man cornered. "Give me the report." Maggie straightened. "No. You are making this uglier than it has to be. You put poison in a newborn's food. Ugly started without me." Pike reached into his coat pocket. Maggie saw the motion before she saw the syringe. Clear barrel, fine needle. No label. Her body knew before her mind named it. He was not trying to frighten her. He was trying to finish her. You know, Pike said voice almost conversational stress does strange things to nurses. Long shifts, emotional pressure, dangerous families, access to medications. A sudden cardiac event in a locked supply room would be tragic, but not impossible. Maggie's eyes stayed on the syringe. "What is that potassium?" He smiled. "You always did read too much. Not enough, apparently. I should have read you sooner." His smile faltered. Then he lunged. Maggie stepped in instead of back. It was the last thing he expected. Men like Pike expected fear to retreat. Maggie moved toward the danger left hand, striking his wrist sideways, right palm driving into his forearm with a clean, brutal snap. The syringe flew from his hand and skittered across the floor. Pike cried out, folding over his injured arm. Maggie did not give him space to recover. She hooked one foot behind his ankle and shoved her shoulder into his chest. He went down hard, knocking over a bin of plastic tubing. He gasped for air. Maggie dropped her knee across his sternum and grabbed his collar. The old training lived in her muscles. Control the limb, control the breath, control the room. Pike clawed at her wrist. "You broke my arm," he wheezed. "You tried to murder me, you stupid girl." Maggie leaned closer. "You tried to murder a baby first." His face twisted in pain and hatred. "You think Noah will love you for this? Is that what this is? You saw a grieving king and wanted to be chosen." Maggie's grip tightened. The words should not have reached her. They did anyway, not because they were true, but because they touched the strange, dangerous thing growing in every silent moment she had shared with Noah Callahan. She pushed it aside. "This is not about me." Pike laughed, then choked as her knee pressed harder. "Everything is about you people. Nurses with savior complexes, gangsters with dead wives, babies who should not have survived the first night." Maggie's face went still. The room changed. Pike realized what he had said too late. Maggie lowered her voice until it was almost a whisper. "You knew Grace was meant to die with him." He closed his mouth. The lock clicked. The supply room door burst inward so hard it struck the wall. 2 of Noah's men entered with weapons drawn. Tommy came first, pale and furious. Behind him came Noah. Noah did not shout. That was worse. His eyes moved from Maggie to Pike to the syringe on the floor. Then to Maggie again. "Are you hurt, No?" The answer came too quickly. Noah saw that too. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The room felt smaller with him in it, as if the walls had shifted inward to make room for his rage. Maggie stood, keeping one foot near Pike's hand. Tommy picked up the syringe with a gloved evidence bag from a nearby shelf. Noah stared at Pike. "Explain why my son's doctor is on the floor with a needle beside him." Pike began to shake. "Noah, listen to me." "No." The word was quiet. Pike stopped. Noah turned to Maggie. She pulled the toxicology report from inside her scrub top and handed it to him. The paper had creased against her skin. Noah took it like it weighed more than bone. His eyes scanned the page. Maggie watched the moment he understood. It did not happen all at once. First, the medical confusion cleared. Then the fear sharpened. Then came the grief, followed by something older and darker than anger. His hand closed around the paper. Maggie spoke before he could move. The compound was in Eli's TPN. It forces the body to burn through energy at a dangerous rate. In a premature infant, it looks like failure to thrive. It looks like his body is the problem. Noah did not look away from Pike, but it was never his body. "No," Maggie said. "It was the bag." Pike struggled to sit up, cradling his arm. "I was forced." Noah took one step toward him. The guards shifted away without being told. Pike's voice broke. "I did not plan the bombing. I did not touch Grace. I only handled the medical side. Only." The words seemed to remove the last human thing from Noah's face. He pulled a pistol from inside his jacket with a smoothness that made Maggie's breath catch. The barrel came to rest against Pike's forehead. Pike began sobbing. "Noah, please. I can fix it. I can testify. I can give you accounts, names, everything." Noah's finger settled near the trigger. "Noah," Maggie said. He did not move. She stepped closer. Tommy looked at her with warning in his eyes. Maggie ignored him and placed her hand over Noah's wrist. His skin was hot. His arm was iron. "Not here," she said. His eyes stayed on Pike. "He starved, my son. I know." He stood beside me and named it medicine. "I know." He touched Grace's child. Maggie's hand tightened. "And if you kill him now, Cal Brennan walks out of this hospital alive and clean." For the first time, Noah looked at her. The name hit him like a physical blow. "What did you say?" Maggie swallowed. Her throat felt raw, but her voice stayed steady. "I heard Pike and Cal in the stairwell. Cal paid him. Cal was part of the bombing. Grace was supposed to die with Eli still inside her. When Eli survived, they used Pike to finish what the bomb did not." Noah stared at her. The gun remained pressed to Pike's forehead, but the rage in his eyes faltered beneath something worse. Betrayal, not the sharp kind that made a man strike, the deep kind that made him remember every moment he had mistaken poison for loyalty. "Cal held my son," Noah said. Maggie said nothing. Cal stood beside Grace's coffin. "Yes." He called her family. "Yes." Noah's jaw clenched so hard Maggie heard the faint grind of his teeth. Pike whimpered beneath the gun. "He said you were finished. He said the captains would never follow a man broken by grief. He said if the child died slowly, no one would question it." Noah's eyes closed for half a second. When they opened, the man who looked back was not a father, not entirely. He was the king Boston feared. Maggie knew she had seconds before that king took control and filled the room with blood. "Noah," she said. His gaze snapped to hers. "You need your captains to hear the truth from someone else's mouth. Not mine, not yours, his." Pike shook his head. "No. Cal will kill me." Noah looked down at him. "That is the first intelligent thing you have said." Maggie stepped between them enough to make Noah lower the gun by an inch. "Cal knows you are grieving. He is counting on you acting like a wounded animal. If you accuse him now, he will deny it. He will call Pike unstable. He will say I misunderstood what I heard. He will tell your men that pain has made you paranoid." Noah's voice was low. "My men know me. They know power. They know certainty. Give them both." The room went quiet. The only sound was Pike crying through his nose. Noah looked at Maggie as if seeing her again, not as the nurse who adjusted blankets and checked lines, but as someone standing beside him inside the machinery of his world and understanding how it moved. "You have thought this through," he said. "I have had a long night." Something like admiration flickered in his eyes, dark and unwilling. Maggie turned to Pike. "You are going to replace every contaminated bag with clean nutrition while I watch. Then you are going to write the orders Eli actually needs, and Aaron in the lab is going to verify the next batch." Pike shook his head. "I cannot just change everything. The pharmacy will ask." "You are chief of neonatology," Maggie said. "Sound important." Tommy gave a short, disbelieving breath. Noah did not smile. He crouched in front of Pike. "And after my son is stable," Pike stared at him with wet, terrified eyes. Noah's voice became soft enough to chill the room. "You will call Cal." "No. You will tell him the next dose was given." Pike's lips trembled. And then Noah looked at Maggie. She understood the question. The plan formed between them without ceremony, ugly and necessary. At 7 a.m, she said, "Eli is pronounced dead." Tommy looked up sharply. "No." Noah's eyes did not leave Maggie's face. She continued, "Only the people in this room know he is alive. We move him before shift change through the service corridor to the recovery suite near radiology. It has oxygen access and no public listing since the renovation. I can keep him monitored there." Pike tells Cal the baby crashed before morning rounds. Pike began to shake harder. "Cal will want confirmation." "He gets it," Noah said. Maggie looked at him. Noah stood slowly. "He gets me broken. He gets my men called in. He gets a room full of captains watching him decide the family needs a new hand on the wheel." Maggie felt a coldness move through her. "You think he will make his move that fast?" Noah's mouth tightened. "He has been waiting for my son to die. Men like Cal do not grieve before taking inventory. The sentence cost him something." Maggie saw it in the brief flicker around his eyes. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Eli is alive. Hold on to that." Noah looked through the wall, though he could not see the incubator from here. For a moment, the rage left enough room for the father to return. "Can you keep him that way?" "Yes." The answer came before she could measure it. Noah heard the certainty and believed it because he needed to. Pike gave a broken laugh from the floor. "You are both insane. This is a hospital." Maggie looked down at him. It was. Tommy pulled Pike to his feet. The doctor cried out from the pain in his arm. Noah leaned close to him. "You are going to walk out of this room. You are going to look tired, worried, and useful. You are going to do exactly what Maggie tells you. If your voice shakes near Cal, if your eyes move wrong, if my son's clean nutrition is delayed by 1 minute, I will know." Pike nodded frantically. Yes, I understand." Noah held his gaze. "No, you do not." He placed the pistol back inside his jacket. "That is why you are still breathing." The supply room door opened. The hallway outside seemed too bright, too ordinary, too full of people who did not know death had just passed through and left fingerprints on everything. Maggie stepped out first. Her knees wanted to shake. She did not let them. Noah walked beside her toward the NICU. Their shoulders nearly touched. Neither spoke until they reached the glass. Inside, Eli lay beneath the warmer, impossibly small, still fighting. Maggie washed her hands, put on fresh gloves, and entered the room with Pike behind her. Noah stayed outside, one palm flat against the glass. Under Maggie's supervision, Pike removed the compromised line and documented a formula change due to suspected intolerance. He ordered a fresh preparation from a separate pharmacy batch and signed every field with his own credentials. Maggie watched each click, each scan, each movement of his hand. When the clean bag arrived, she inspected it herself. No puncture, no hidden seal, no strange residue beneath the label. Only then did she hang it. The line filled slowly. Nutrition moved toward Eli's body. Maggie stood beside the incubator and waited. Minutes passed. The heart rate held. The temperature did not climb. Eli made a small sound and shifted his head. Noah closed his eyes on the other side of the glass. Not relief. Not yet. But the first breath after drowning. Maggie looked at him through the reflection. For a heartbeat, the hospital, the guns, Pike, Cal, all of it seemed to fall away. There was only a father and a nurse staring at a baby who had been given back a chance. Then Pike's phone buzzed. Everyone froze. The name on the screen was Cal Brennan. Pike looked at Noah. Noah looked at Maggie. Maggie nodded once. Pike answered on speaker, his face gray. "Yes." Cal's voice came through low and impatient. "Is it done?" Pike looked at Eli, then at Noah's hand resting near his jacket. He swallowed. "Not yet," he said. "But he is declining. By morning, it should be over." There was silence. Then Cal exhaled. "Good. Call me the second the boy is gone." The line went dead. Noah stared at the phone. Maggie saw his hand curl into a fist. She moved beside him. "Morning," she said quietly. Noah looked down at her. In his eyes lived grief, violence, trust, and something neither of them had the room to name. "Morning," he said. Behind them, the machines kept counting Eli's breaths, one small life, measured in beeps numbers and the unbearable patience of those who loved him. Morning arrived without Mercy. A thin gray light pressed against the windows of Mercy Harbor, turning the glass pale and cold. The rain had stopped some time before dawn, but the city still looked soaked through every rooftop and street lamp blurred by mist rising off the harbor. Inside the 8th floor, no one spoke louder than a whisper. Maggie had not sat down in hours. She stood beside Eli's incubator with her sleeves pushed up, her hair tied back, and her eyes fixed on the monitors. The clean nutrition moved through the line, drop by drop, slow as prayer. Every number mattered. Every beep felt like a question. Heart rate steady, temperature lower, oxygen holding. For the first time in days, Eli Callahan was not being dragged backward by an invisible hand. He was still terribly small. His cheeks were hollow. His skin still carried the fragile red tint of a baby born too early and forced to fight too hard. But the sharp panic in his body had begun to ease. His tiny fists opened and closed against the blanket as if he were testing the world and deciding whether to stay. Noah stood on the other side of the glass. He had not slept. He had not changed clothes. His face looked carved from exhaustion, but his eyes were alive in a way they had not been the night before. Maggie saw him watching Eli as if he feared that blinking might cost him everything. Dr. Pike sat in a chair near the medication station with his broken arm wrapped in a temporary splint beneath his coat. His face was gray, sweat gathered along his hairline. Tommy Vale stood behind him, silent and close, one hand inside his jacket. Noah did not need to threaten Pike again. Pike understood the room. At 6:20, Maggie lifted Eli from the incubator with the help of a respiratory nurse she trusted more than most people trusted family. Her name was Laurel, and she had worked beside Maggie through enough emergencies to read her face without questions. Laurel looked at Noah, then at the guards, then at Pike. "What happened?" she whispered. Maggie adjusted the warm blanket around Eli. "His nutrition was wrong. We fixed it." Laurel held her gaze for a second. That was not the whole truth, but it was enough for now. Together they moved Eli through the rear staff corridor away from the main NICU doors and past storage rooms filled with unused equipment. Noah followed close enough to see his son, but far enough not to crowd the medical team. Every instinct in him wanted Eli in his arms. Every better instinct kept him still. They entered a small recovery suite near radiology, a room left half forgotten after renovations. It had oxygen ports, monitor access, a warming unit, a sink, and no public listing on the hospital directory. Maggie had chosen it because people forgot places that looked unfinished. Noah's men swept the room first. Then Maggie settled Eli into the warmer attached the leads, checked his line, and waited for the screen to show a steady rhythm. It did. Noah exhaled through his nose. The sound was almost nothing. Maggie heard it anyway. "He stays here," she said. "Only Laurel Tommy, you, and me enter this room. Pike does not come near him unless I say so." Pike stood near the doorway, trembling. Noah looked at him. "You heard her." Pike nodded. His eyes kept sliding to Eli, not with concern but terror. Maggie wondered if he saw the baby at all now, or only the evidence of what he had done breathing in front of him. At 6:55, Noah stood in the corridor outside the hidden room. Maggie stepped out with him. For a moment, neither spoke. The hospital seemed to stretch around them, full of ordinary morning sounds. A cart rolled somewhere below. An elevator chimed. A nurse laughed softly at something near the main station, unaware that a child's life and a criminal empire were both balanced on the next few minutes. Noah looked at Maggie. "When this starts, you stay behind me." "No." His mouth tightened. "I am not asking. I know. Cal is dangerous. So are you. That is why I know." Maggie looked through the small glass panel in the door. Eli lay under the warmer breathing softly. "Your son needs one person in that room who is thinking about him before pride, power, or revenge." Noah's eyes stayed on her face. "You think that is not me?" "I think it is you when you remember who you are holding this line for." That struck him quiet. Maggie softened just a little. "Do not let Cal turn this into the thing he planned. He wants a broken man. Do not give him one." Noah looked down the hall, jaw tight. Then he nodded once. At 7 exactly, Dr. Pike made the call. He stood in the private waiting room with Noah beside him and Tommy behind him. His phone shook in his hand, but his voice somehow held together. Noah Pike said loud enough for the men near the door to hear, "I am sorry." Eli went into sudden organ failure. We tried to revive him. There was nothing more we could do. The room froze. 2 guards looked at Noah. Noah did not react at first. He stood in the center of the waiting room with his head slightly lowered, his hands loose at his sides. For one terrible second, Maggie wondered if the performance had become too close to the truth. He looked like a man standing at the edge of a grave he had already dug in his mind. Then he moved. He grabbed a chair and hurled it into the wall. The impact cracked the plaster. One of the nurses outside gasped. Noah turned over the glass coffee table with one hard kick. It shattered across the floor in bright pieces. He bent forward, bracing his hands on his knees, and made a sound that hollowed the room. Not a shout, not even a sob. A broken breath dragged from a place too deep for language. Maggie stood near the hallway entrance and felt it hit her chest. The men believed him because in some awful way it was real. Noah was not pretending to grieve. He was opening the door to grief and letting everyone see the room inside. Pike lowered his head. "I am sorry," he repeated. Noah turned on him with wild eyes. Tommy stepped between them just enough to make the watching guards believe he was preventing murder. "Boss," Tommy said. "Not here." Noah shoved him back. "Get out," Noah Pike said carefully, voice shaking now for reasons that needed no acting. "We did everything possible." Noah stared at him, breathing hard. Then he sank into the chair beside the ruined table, elbows on his knees, face in his hands. The waiting room filled with silence. And then the calls began. Men moved into corners and spoke into phones. A death inside the Callahan family did not remain private. It traveled like smoke through the city into back rooms, private clubs, warehouses, and restaurants where captains took their breakfast with men who pretended not to listen. Maggie watched from the edge of the room. Cal Brennan arrived 20 minutes later. He came in wearing a black suit and a grief face so carefully arranged that Maggie almost admired the craftsmanship of it. His hair was damp from the mist outside. His eyes moved first to the broken table, then to Pike, then to Noah. For a fraction of a second, he looked satisfied. Then the mask returned. "Noah," he said, voice low. Noah did not look up. Cal crossed the room and placed both hands on his cousin's shoulders. "Brother, I am so sorry." Noah's fingers curled against his own forehead. "He's gone," Noah whispered. Cal closed his eyes as if the words wounded him. Maggie watched his thumbs. They pressed once into Noah's shoulders, a performance of comfort, a test of control. Cal looked toward Pike. The doctor nodded barely. Cal turned back to Noah. "You should not be alone right now." Noah gave a bitter laugh into his hands. "Alone is all I have left." The words seemed to please Cal. He hid it by lowering his head. Maggie's stomach turned. Around 7:30, the captains began arriving. They did not come together. Men like that rarely did. They came in dark coats and careful silence, one after another, each carrying years of violence behind his eyes. Frankie Doyle arrived first, thick neck silver ring, old scar across his eyebrow. He had been with Noah's father before Noah took control. Then came Martin Sloan, quiet and thin with accountant hands and executioner eyes. Then Joseph Keene, broad and red-faced, who ran the South Docks and never forgave weakness. Eddie Marr dressed like a funeral director even on ordinary days. Polly Quinn, younger than the others, always watching, always calculating. Last came Raymond Cross, the oldest, moving with a cane and the slow patience of a man who had survived every hothead in Boston. They stood in the waiting room, eyes on the broken glass, then on Noah. Noah remained seated. His silence did more than words could have. It made them uncomfortable. Maggie saw Cal notice that discomfort and feed on it. He waited. That was the smartest thing he did. He let the men take in the room. Let them see Noah folded over. Let them feel the absence of the air. Let them imagine the organization without a steady hand. Then Cal stepped forward. "Gentlemen," he said. His voice carried just enough. Noah did not lift his head. Cal placed one hand over his heart. "This family has taken a blow no man should have to carry. First Grace, now the child. I know every one of you loved her. I know every one of you prayed for that little boy." Maggie looked at the captains. Some bowed their heads, some only stared. Cal continued. "Noah has led us through storms no other man could survive. None of us forget that. None of us question what he built." Raymond Cross watched him over the top of his cane. Cal took a breath. "But grief changes the strongest men. We have seen it. We have all buried people. A man cannot hold a kingdom together while his hands are full of ashes." Noah's fingers shifted against his temples. Maggie saw it. Cal did not. "The Russians are moving near the south routes," Cal said. "Federal pressure is rising. The money channels are exposed after the last audit. Our enemies are not waiting for us to heal." Joseph Keene folded his arms. "What are you saying?" "Cal." Cal looked pained as if the words were being torn from him. "I am saying Noah needs time. He needs space to bury his son and mourn his wife. Until he can stand again, someone has to keep the family from bleeding." Polly Quinn's eyes narrowed. "And that someone is you?" Cal lowered his gaze. "As underboss, it is my responsibility." Noah gave no response. Cal stepped further into the center of the room. "I am not taking from him. I am protecting what he built. Effective immediately, I will assume operational control until Noah is ready." The room shifted. Not agreement. Not yet. But possibility. Maggie felt the danger of it. power did not always move with shouting. Sometimes it moved in small glances between men who wanted to survive the next season. Frankie Doyle looked at Noah. "Boss." Noah did not answer. Cal spoke before the silence could hurt him. "He cannot answer you right now." That was the first mistake. Noah's hands dropped slowly. His face lifted. The grief in his expression did not vanish. It changed shape, hardened, burned clean, became something with edges. "No," Noah said. "I can answer." Cal turned. For the first time since entering the room, uncertainty moved across his face. Noah stood. Broken glass crunched beneath his shoes. "I was wondering how long you would wait," Noah said. Cal's mouth tightened. "Noah, this is not the time. You thought it was." The captains looked from one man to the other. Cal softened his voice. "You are in shock." Noah stepped closer. "Am I?" Cal spread his hands. "Everyone here understands. No one blames you." Maggie moved to the doorway. Noah saw her. She held his gaze for half a second, then looked toward the hall. The room stilled. From the side corridor, Laurel entered first, face pale but steady. Behind her, Maggie walked in, carrying Eli Callahan wrapped in a soft blue blanket. Alive, breathing, small against her chest, but alive. The silence that followed was complete. Every captain stared. Frankie Doyle crossed himself. Joseph Keene took one step back. Cal's face emptied. Noah turned toward Maggie, and for one instant, in front of every dangerous man in that room, everything fierce in him softened. She placed Eli carefully into his arms. Noah held his son with reverence. Then he looked at Cal. "You look like you saw a ghost." Cal's mouth opened. No sound came. Pike swayed near the wall. Cal found his voice with effort. "What is this?" Noah adjusted the blanket around Eli's tiny body. "This is my son. You said he died. You heard what you needed to hear." Cal looked at Pike. Pike could not meet his eyes. The room began to understand. Noah lifted his chin. "Bring him in." Tommy opened the outer door. Two men dragged Dr. Pike to the center of the room, though he had already been standing there. The movement was for the captains. Theater mattered. Cal had used it. Now Noah would. Pike dropped to his knees. His broken arm hung awkwardly. Sweat rolled down his temple. Noah looked at the captains. "You all know Dr. Warren Pike, chief of neonatology, trusted specialist. The man who told me my son was starving because his body could not accept food." He looked down at Pike. "Tell them." Pike shook his head once. Noah said nothing. Tommy placed the evidence bag with the syringe on the table beside the shattered glass. Maggie placed the toxicology report beside it. Laurel set down printed copies of the nutrition logs and refrigerator access records. The captains leaned in with their eyes. Noah did not raise his voice. "My son's TPN bags were tampered with. Poison was added after pharmacy preparation. It forced his body to burn through calories faster than nutrition could replace them. That is why he lost weight. That is why every doctor in this hospital called it a mystery." Raymond Cross looked at Pike. "Is that true?" Pike's lips trembled. "Yes." The word cracked through the room. Cal stepped back. "Noah, come on. You are trusting the word of a frightened doctor and a nurse who wants attention." Maggie did not flinch. Noah looked at Cal. "I was hoping you would try that." He reached into his pocket and took out a small recorder. Cal's eyes fixed on it. Noah pressed play. Pike's voice filled the waiting room. At first, only the rough breath of panic. Then the confession. His own words naming the compound, the tampered bags, the payments routed through offshore accounts, the instructions from Cal Brennan, the timing after Grace's death, the purpose behind it all. The captains listened without moving. The recording played on. Pike described how Cal wanted Eli dead slowly, naturally, in a way that looked like medical failure. He described Cal's belief that Noah would break after losing both wife and child. He described the planned transfer of power, the pressure on Pike, the promise of money, the threats, the orders. When the recording ended, no one spoke. Cal's face had gone white, then red, then something uglier. "You believe that," he said, looking around the room. "You believe this? A doctor trying to save himself? A nurse playing hero? Noah has been unstable for weeks. You have all seen it." Joseph Keene stepped forward. "I saw the baby." Cal turned on him. "You saw a trick." Frankie Doyle's hand moved inside his coat. Cal noticed. His voice sharpened. "Do not be stupid, Frankie." Raymond Cross tapped his cane once against the floor. "Enough." The old man's voice was not loud, but the room obeyed it. He looked at Noah. "You have the lab proof." Maggie handed him the toxicology report. Raymond read slowly, then passed it to Martin Sloan. Martin reviewed the access logs. Pike entered the storage room before the drops, Martin said. Pike began to cry again. Cal backed toward the door. Noah watched him. "Grace," Noah said. Cal stopped. The name changed the room more than any evidence had. Noah's voice grew quieter. "Tell me you did not put that bomb under her car." Cal's jaw worked. For 1 second, Maggie thought he might lie well enough to make even the devil proud. Instead, pride ruined him. "She made you weak." The captains went still. Cal's eyes burned now. "You were untouchable before her. Then she had you talking about selling pieces, shutting down routes, cleaning money for charities, pretending men like us can become fathers in little houses with lawns." Noah stared at him. Cal pointed at Eli. "That baby was going to be the end of you." Noah's face did not move. Cal's voice rose. "I saved what your father built." Noah took 1 step toward him. "My father was a drunk who beat his sons and sold fear because it was the only thing he had." Cal's mouth twisted. "And you think you are better?" "No," Noah said. "I think my son should be." The room absorbed that. Maggie felt her throat tighten. Cal saw the captains then. Really saw them. Their faces were not uncertain anymore. They were closed doors. He reached inside his jacket. 4 guns appeared before his hand cleared the fabric. Tommy's weapon was at his chest. Frankie's at his head. Joseph's at his throat. Paulie's at his ribs. Cal froze. Noah did not draw. He held Eli instead. That frightened Cal more. "Noah," Cal said, voice breaking around the edges. "We are blood." Noah looked down at his son. Eli stirred in the blanket, his mouth opening in a silent, sleepy cry. Maggie stepped closer on instinct, but Noah gently rocked him once. The baby settled. Only then did Noah look at Cal. "Blood put my wife in a grave." Cal swallowed. "Noah, blood put poison in my son's food. I did it for the family." Noah's eyes darkened. "You did it because you wanted my chair and did not have the spine to take it from me while I was standing." Cal's face collapsed into panic. The charm was gone. The grief mask was gone. The brother was gone. All that remained was a small man who had mistaken cruelty for strength. Noah looked at Raymond Cross. The old captain gave 1 slow nod. Noah turned to Tommy. "Take him downstairs. Keep him breathing until the police receive the recording, the financial records, and the evidence Maggie collected." Cal blinked. That was not what he expected. Neither did some of the captains. Noah noticed. "My son lives," he said. "My wife deserves truth on paper, not another body hidden in the dark." Cal laughed wildly. "You think the police can hold me?" Noah stepped close enough for Cal to see Eli sleeping in his arms. "No," he said. "I think every man in this room knows you touched a child. Prison is only the first door." Cal looked around for mercy. There was none. Tommy and another guard took him by the arms. As they dragged him toward the service corridor, Cal fought once, then stopped when Frankie Doyle raised his gun again. At the doorway, Cal looked back. "Noah, please." Noah did not answer. The door closed. The room remained silent long after he was gone. Then Pike made a wet, broken sound from the floor. Maggie looked at him. His eyes were fixed on Eli. "I can still help," he said. "I know the dosing schedule. I know what to monitor. Please, I can help." Maggie stepped toward him. "You will write every detail, every dose, every bag, every symptom you caused. You will help because that is the last useful thing your hands will ever do in a hospital." Pike nodded desperately. Noah looked at Tommy. "Keep him watched." Tommy took Pike away. One by one, the captains faced Noah. No grand speech followed, no applause, no pledge shouted into the air. Men like them did not need ceremony when fear and loyalty had already chosen sides. Raymond Cross approached last. His eyes dropped to Eli. "Strong boy." Noah held him closer. "Stronger than us." Raymond looked at Maggie. "Strong nurse, too." Maggie said nothing. Raymond gave Noah a look full of old history. Grace would have liked that. Noah's throat moved. Yes. When the captains left, the waiting room looked like the scene of a storm. Broken glass covered the carpet. The overturned table lay near the wall. Coffee had spilled in a dark stain across the floor. Sunlight finally reached the windows, thin and pale, but real. Maggie stood in the center of it all, feeling the weight of the night settle into her bones. Noah walked to her with Eli still in his arms. For a while, neither of them spoke. The baby breathed between them. Noah looked down at his son, then at Maggie. "You carried him into that room like you were bringing back the sun." Maggie's eyes burned, but she held his gaze. "He did the hard part." "No," Noah said softly. "You did." She looked away. "I did my job." Noah stepped closer. The room around them still smelled of coffee antiseptic and gun oil. His men waited outside. The hospital continued beyond the walls. Somewhere below, Cal Brennan was being taken through corridors that no longer belonged to him. But in that small pocket of quiet, Noah was not a king. He was a father, holding a child who should have died and did not. "You saved my son," he said. Maggie reached out and touched the edge of Eli's blanket. "He still needs care. He will have it. He needs time. He has it." She looked up. "And he needs a life that does not keep putting him in rooms like this." Noah's eyes held hers. The answer did not come quickly. That was why she believed it when it did. "I know." Eli shifted again, face turning toward Maggie's voice. She smiled before she could stop herself. Noah saw it. Something changed in his expression. Something quiet and dangerous in a different way now. Not threat, not possession. Recognition. As if the same woman who had pulled his son from death had also reached into the part of him he thought had been buried with Grace and found one living nerve. Maggie felt it too. She hated that she felt it here, amid broken glass and bloodless confessions, beside a man whose life was built from all the things she had spent years trying to heal. Still, when Noah lifted one hand and brushed a loose strand of hair from her cheek, she did not step back. His touch was careful, almost reverent. "You should be afraid of me," he said. "I am." His hand stilled. Maggie looked at Eli. "I am just more afraid of what happens if no one decent stays close to him." Noah absorbed that with a faint, painful smile. "Decent," he said. "I was talking about him." For the first time that morning, Noah almost laughed. It broke something in the air. Not the tension, not completely, but enough for both of them to breathe. Laurel appeared in the doorway. "Maggie," she said softly, His warmer is ready." Maggie nodded and took Eli back from Noah with practiced care. Noah let him go, but slowly, as if surrendering a piece of his own chest. They walked together toward the hidden recovery suite. Outside the windows, Boston moved into morning. Cars passed below. Sirens wailed far away. The harbor shone dull silver under a clearing sky. Inside the room, Maggie placed Eli back beneath the warmer. His monitor found its rhythm again. Noah stood beside her. This time, no glass separated him from his son. Maggie guided his hand. 2 fingers, she said. Light pressure. Let him decide. Noah touched Eli's tiny palm. The baby's fingers opened, then closed around him. Noah bowed his head. Maggie stayed beside them close enough to hear his breathing steady, close enough to understand that something inside the room had survived the night besides Eli. In the silence that followed, Eli opened his eyes. They were dark and unfocused, too new to understand the world, too small to know the war that had been fought around him. But Noah froze as if the child had spoken his name. Maggie watched his hand tremble. Just a little. Just enough to prove that the most feared man in Boston still had pieces of himself no one had hardened yet. Eli's fingers tightened around Noah's 2 fingers. The baby made a faint sound, a thin, breathy protest against the light, the wires, the cold air, the life that had demanded so much from him before he had even learned to cry properly. Noah leaned closer. "Hey, little man," he whispered. His voice broke on the last word. Maggie adjusted the blanket around Eli's legs and checked the monitor. Heart rate steady, temperature stable, oxygen holding. The numbers were not perfect, but for the first time in weeks, they were honest. Noah looked at the screen. "He's not dropping." "No," Maggie said softly. "He's not." He swallowed, eyes still fixed on the baby. "How long before he's safe?" Maggie took a breath. Safe was a word people used when they wanted the world to be kinder than it was. In a NICU, safe came slowly. In Noah Callahan's life, safe was even harder to promise. "He needs time," she said. "Clean nutrition. Careful monitoring. No stress. No more poison in his line." Noah's face tightened at the word poison, but he did not pull away from Eli. "He'll have all of that." Maggie looked at him. And after this room, Noah did not answer. Outside the recovery suite, footsteps moved along the corridor. Voices lowered when they passed the door. The hospital had begun to wake into the aftermath of something it did not yet fully understand. Administrators were already gathering behind closed doors. Legal teams were being called. Police would come. Statements would be shaped. Careers would collapse. Men who believed themselves untouchable would start looking over their shoulders. But inside the small room, none of that mattered yet. Only Eli. Only the soft rise of his chest. Only Noah, standing beside the warmer like a man afraid that if he moved, grace itself might leave. Laurel returned with fresh supplies and a look that told Maggie the 8th floor was changing by the minute. "Hospital director is asking for you," Laurel said. Maggie gave a tired laugh. "I'm sure he is. He looks like he aged 10 years in 20 minutes. Noah's eyes did not leave Eli. "Tell him to wait." Laurel looked at Maggie. Maggie looked at Noah. "No," she said. That got his attention. He turned slowly. Maggie removed her gloves and dropped them into the bin. "You do not get to lock down the truth now that it is inconvenient." His expression cooled. "I am protecting my son. You protect him by making sure this never happens to another baby in this hospital." Noah stared at her. Laurel suddenly found a reason to check the supply cart. Maggie stepped closer to Noah, lowering her voice. "I know what you are used to. I know people disappear in your world. I know problems are handled in quiet rooms with no paperwork. But this cannot become one of those stories. Noah's jaw flexed. Pike will talk. Good. Cal will be dealt with. Legally. His eyes sharpened. Maggie. Noah. For a moment they stood there with Eli between them, not touching, not yielding, both too tired to pretend the argument was only about law. Noah looked down at his son. The anger drained slowly from his face, leaving something older behind. Something that had started the night Grace died, and had not yet found a place to rest. She wanted him clean of this, he said. Maggie's voice softened. Then give him one clean thing today. The words settled into him. Noah closed his eyes. When he opened them, the decision was already made. Call the director, he said to Laurel. Tell him I want federal agents, hospital counsel, and the state medical board notified. Everything goes on record. Laurel blinked. Maggie did not. Noah looked at her. Do not look surprised. I'm not. You are. A little. The corner of his mouth moved, only for a second. Then Eli stirred again, and Noah returned his attention to the tiny hand wrapped around his fingers. By noon, Mercy Harbor was surrounded by news vans. By one, Dr. Warren Pike had signed the first written statement under guard, his arrogance stripped down to shaking hands and a ruined voice. By 3, Cal Brennan had been taken into federal custody from a private parking structure below the hospital, still wearing his black suit, still shouting that Noah would regret choosing strangers over blood. Noah heard the report without expression. Maggie heard it while changing Eli's line. She waited for Noah to show satisfaction. He did not. He only watched his son. That was when she understood. Revenge had not healed him. It had not even fed the hunger. It had only cleared enough smoke for him to see what was still burning. Grace was still gone. Eli was still fragile. And Noah Callahan was still standing in the life that had led them here. That night, Maggie found him in the chapel on the 2nd floor. The hospital chapel was small, with wooden pews, stained glass, and battery candles glowing near a statue of Mary. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The room smelled faintly of wax and old flowers. Noah sat in the back row, elbows on his knees, hands clasped in front of him. He did not look up when Maggie entered. I don't pray, he said. I didn't ask. She sat beside him, leaving a careful space between them. For a while they listened to the rain. Maggie's body ached. Her eyes burned. Her scrubs smelled of antiseptic and stress. She should have gone home. She should have showered, slept, eaten something that did not come from a vending machine. Instead, she sat beside a mob boss in a hospital chapel because his son had survived and his whole world had not. Noah stared at the candles. Grace used to come in places like this and light one for me. Maggie looked at him. Did you deserve it? No. Did she know that? Yes. A faint, broken smile touched his face. She said that was the point. Maggie leaned back against the pew. She sounds stubborn. She was impossible. You loved that. I loved everything. The honesty sat between them, quiet and heavy. Noah rubbed his thumb over his knuckles. I keep thinking about the last thing she said to me. Maggie waited. She told me I couldn't stand in front of every bad thing. His eyes stayed on the candles. I thought that meant I had to become stronger. Maggie's voice was gentle. Maybe she meant you had to stop inviting bad things to the door. Noah gave a low breath that was almost a laugh and almost pain. You talk like her sometimes. I'm sorry. I'm not. The rain thickened against the glass. Maggie looked down at her hands. Noah, I need you to understand something. He turned his head slightly. I will care for Eli as long as he is my patient. I will fight for him. I will stand up to anyone who puts him at risk. I know, but I am not something you can pull into your world because I saved him. His eyes darkened, but not with anger. With all respect, Maggie Reed, nobody pulls you anywhere. That almost made her smile. Almost. I mean it. So do I. He looked back at the candles. I don't know how to want anything without wanting to keep it. The confession was quiet enough that Maggie nearly missed it, but she heard him. She heard the boy under the boss, the man under the monster, the father under the wreckage. That is not love, she said. No. He nodded once. I am learning that. 3 months later, Eli Callahan weighed 7 pounds 2 ounces. Maggie wrote the number on his chart and stared at it longer than necessary. 7 pounds 2 ounces. It was not a miracle in the way people used the word carelessly. It was work. It was night feedings, sterile lines, careful calculations, blood tests, setbacks, whispered encouragement, and a baby who fought like his mother had placed steel in his bones. Still, when Noah heard the number, he closed his eyes. Maggie pretended not to see. The NICU had changed too. Mercy Harbor no longer kept its failures behind polished language. The investigation had gutted the old leadership. Pharmacy protocols changed. Access logs became stricter. 2 administrators resigned before they could be removed. Pike's awards vanished from the wall outside the physician lounge. And on the east side of the hospital, construction crews began work on a new pediatric recovery unit funded by a donation no one had expected Noah to make publicly. The plaque went up on a rainy Thursday morning. Maggie stood in the hallway with Eli in her arms while Noah watched the workers screw it into the wall. Grace Callahan Pediatric Recovery Unit. Under the name, smaller words had been carved into brushed steel, for children who deserve a gentler world. Noah stared at it for a long time. Maggie shifted Eli against her shoulder. He would like to know if staring at metal is a family tradition. Noah looked over. Eli blinked sleepily, one fist tucked under his chin. He looks unimpressed. He is. He told me. Noah stepped closer, and the hallway seemed to change around him the way rooms always did when he entered. But the staff did not scatter anymore. Not all of them. Some still lowered their eyes. Some still whispered. But others nodded. A few even smiled at Eli. Noah noticed. He did not comment. Maggie handed him the baby. His hands were still careful, but no longer afraid of their own size. Eli settled against his chest with a soft sigh. Noah looked down at him. Hey, little man. The words had become a ritual. Maggie watched them together. There were moments when she could almost forget what Noah was. Not because the truth disappeared, but because fatherhood had pulled another truth out beside it. He was dangerous. He was grieving. He was trying. Trying did not erase blood. It did not clean history. It did not make him safe. But Maggie had spent her life around broken things. Babies born too early, soldiers who woke screaming, mothers who smiled through terror, men who did not know how to hold anything without crushing it. Some broken things still grew. One evening after Eli had been cleared to leave the highest level of care, Maggie found Noah in the new recovery unit. The lights were dim. Most of the staff had gone. Rain streaked the windows again, turning Boston into a watercolor of gold and black. Noah stood beneath Grace's plaque with Eli asleep against his chest. No guards crowded the hall. That was new. Maggie walked up beside him. You dismissed the hallway detail. Reduced it. That is not the same thing. No. At least you're honest. Usually. She looked at him then, recognizing the echo of the story he had once told her about Grace and the gala. Noah recognized it too. A soft silence opened between them. Eli slept warm and heavy with new strength. Noah spoke without looking away from the plaque. I sold 2 routes. Maggie turned toward him. What shut down 3 gambling rooms? Cut ties with a judge before he could ask why? Moved the docs into legitimate contracts through Sloan? Maggie studied his face. That sounds dangerous. It is. Your men will push back. Some have. And I am still standing. There was no pride in it, only fact. Maggie looked through the window at the rain. Grace would have liked that. Noah's throat moved. I hope so. Eli shifted in his sleep cheek pressed against Noah's shirt. Maggie reached up and adjusted the baby's cap. Noah watched her hand. You're not on shift. No. You came anyway. I wanted to check on him. Just him. Maggie's hand stilled. The rain kept tapping the glass. She could have stepped back. She could have made a joke. She could have reminded him of every reason this was complicated, reckless, possibly foolish. Instead, she looked at him. No. Noah took that in slowly, as if he did not trust himself to touch the answer too quickly. I should stay away from you, he said. Probably. I am not a simple man. I noticed. I have enemies. I noticed that too. I cannot promise you a quiet life. Maggie looked at Eli, then back at him. I am not asking you for promises you cannot keep. His eyes held hers. What are you asking for? She thought about the locked hospital wing, the poisoned bag, the gun in his hand, the chapel, the plaque, the tiny boy sleeping between them like a fragile bridge from one life to another. Truth, she said, even when it costs you. Noah nodded. And you, I will give the same. He shifted Eli carefully into one arm. With his free hand, he reached for Maggie's. Slowly. No command, no claim, no force. Just an offer made by a man who was learning that love could not be taken and still remain love. Maggie let his fingers close around hers. His hand was warm, rough, steady. For a while, they stood like that beneath Grace's name with the rain washing the windows and Eli sleeping between them. Noah looked at Maggie. You saved my world. She shook her head. No, I saved your son. His thumb moved lightly over her knuckles. He is my world. Maggie looked at Eli's tiny face, then at Noah. Then build him one worth growing up in. Noah's eyes lowered to their joined hands. I am trying. This time the word was enough to stay. Not forever. Not as a guarantee. Maggie knew better than that. But enough for this night. Enough for the baby breathing between them. Enough for the man who had begun to loosen his grip on an empire so he could learn how to hold a family. Outside, Boston glowed through the rain. Inside, the new pediatric wing hummed softly around them, warm with low lights and clean machines, and the quiet work of people trying to keep small hearts beating. Eli opened his eyes, once looked at nothing and everything, then drifted back to sleep. Noah smiled. A real one. Maggie felt it more than saw it. And in that gentle room built from grief danger and second chances, the nurse who had walked into a locked hospital wing and found the truth understood something she had not allowed herself to believe until that moment. Saving Eli Callahan had not ended the story. It had given all of them a reason to begin again.